equally gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs. All laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer, that 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers, who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Now the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. And the Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, bleeds you dry, then dines on the dead. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. Here's where our leaders would see us all led. The Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, and you'll see that it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your wealth into bread for itself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Fed went straight to your head. Mind what you hide and your sighs unsaid, and your eyes turn blind to the signs unread. Flag bright red, so you let it in bed. You let it inside, you'll see it, it's fed. Never you mind that it grinds your mind, that it grinds yourself, then it bleeds you dry, then it dines on the dead. Here's where our leaders would see us all led.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They can stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show, stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Hiles. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something tidal, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blinded idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me, well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks, I'm anywhere else. If I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book, and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close. Trying to keep you Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.
We're back.
We're back. We're out of YouTube jail. You know, we were what in there for how long?
12 days.
12 whole days. I mean, I scratched the tallies into the wall of the cell.
They literally let us early for good behavior.
Pretty much.
Because one of our strikes got because one of our other strikes that we got back in February got removed yesterday. So I think that was their way of saying, all right, we'll let you out now. So,
which is a good time to make sure that you sub to our alternative platforms like Rockfin and Rumble, which you can find in that indienews.network link in the description below. But otherwise, I think that's most of what we need to get started. Anything else? Any other pre-announcements? I don't think so, right?
like, share, sub, and I think I said this on our stream last week that we posted on in the left's channel, his personal channel. We'll probably move that stream maybe over to this channel at some point within the next week or so. But we obviously, with the last couple of weeks not being able to stream here, we have a lot of clips that we are now able to upload and premiere. So
stay
check out
tuned
for those.
That would be good.
But that being said, thank you guys. You know, even though we were on the lockdown, many of you guys subbed and watched old stuff. So we really appreciate that. So, but yeah, we're back here. We have to be good little boys and girls for a little bit. Well, we have to be good little boys and girls anyway because it's YouTube, but we want to make sure that we don't get another strike again. But we do want to kind of go through these stories, not quickly, but you probably saw on Twitter, I'm actually going to go on Misty's Sarcasm Stardust radio show right after this at 11. So we need to have a hard stop just before 11 so I have enough time to get over there. But yeah, follow me over there once you're done watching this and listen to me chat it up with Misty. But anyway, the stories I brought this week, Bernie Sanders is proposing to raise the minimum wage to $17. I mean, this would have been a lot more helpful a couple of years ago, but he's trying it. He's doing the thing with this. I have problems with this. I'll explain why I have problems with this first. And then later on tonight, in connection to Bernie, we got Row Lie Your Boat, Row Khanna. So he's now leading the charge to bring a bill, via executive order, to cancel all medical debt. And this is connected to another group that we're familiar with in the space. They had a town hall about this a couple of nights ago, so we're going to play a little bit of that. We're also going to talk more about this proposal that Ro is making regarding canceling medical debt. And Reef and I have some thoughts on it that we want to share. And what do you got?
I got protests in Pakistan after they arrested Amir Khan. We'll talk about that and what implications that might have. And you know, if the U.S. was involved, spoiler alert, probably. And who's next? You decide. Little article from the Gray Zone about Ukraine polling who they should murder next, essentially. We'll get into that, but otherwise, you ready to get started, fam?
Yep. So let's get started on this Bernie story. So as I said, Bernie is proposing to increase the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour. So hold on, there we go. So as reported by Common Dreams by our friend, well, not yet, we'll probably have him on the show eventually, Jake Johnson, he writes, to end disgrace of poverty wages, Sanders' bill would hike federal minimum wage to $17. The overwhelming majority of Americans support raising the minimum wage to a living wage. Now, I think here, I'm not sure if he intended to write that, but hold on to that because I'm actually going to get into that a little bit more in terms of what Bernie is proposing and why I think this sucks. Anyway, so Jake reports, decrying the national disgrace of poverty wages in the world's richest country, allegedly, Senator Bernie Sanders on Thursday introduced legislation that would raise the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour over a period of 5 years. Sanders, the chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, lamented that Congress hasn't raised the federal minimum wage in more than a decade, leaving tens of millions of workers with what the senator described as starvation wages. Now is the time to raise the minimum wage, Sanders said at a Capitol Hill press conference alongside union members and service workers. Let's be clear, this is not a radical idea. The overwhelming majority of Americans support raising the minimum wage to a living wage. It is not acceptable today that nearly 35 million American workers earn less than $17 an hour, the senator added. Sanders pledged to push his legislation as quickly and as hard as possible in the Senate, where the bill faces long odds given likely opposition from several members of the chamber's Democratic caucus and every Republican. The Senate Health Committee will hold a markup hearing for the legislation on June 14th, Sanders announced last week. The full text of the bill is not yet available, so we'll probably try, if we get our hands on it, to report on that. But anyway, Mary Kay Henry, president of the SEIU, said during Thursday's press conference that we are going to be watching any congressperson, senator, or in the House that dares to say that they are not going to vote yes for Senator Sanders' bill. They must be held accountable at the ballot box, said Henry. That sounds like something.
Yep.
And you guys are very smart, so I think you can probably know what we're kind of talking about.
Yep.
But we'll continue. More than a decade has passed since Congress had last raised the federal minimum wage, and efforts in recent years to enact a $15 an hour wage floor nationally have fallen short amidst opposition from the GOP, corporate-friendly Democrats, and the business lobby.
That was me. Sorry.
While some lawmakers are sure to balk at the idea of more than doubling the federal minimum wage, a working paper released this week showed that counties that have enacted large minimum wage increases have seen high employment, high wages for workers, and lower inequity. No one in this country can survive on $7.25 an hour, Sanders said Thursday. Maybe some of my colleagues in Congress might want to live for a month on $7.25 an hour and see what that's like. As Congress has failed to act, many states, cities, and counties across the U.S. have raised their minimum wage substantially, but progress is continuing this year. According to a recent report by the National Employment Law Project, a record 86 U.S. jurisdictions are set to raise their minimum wages this year. But 15 states have their minimum wages set at the federal floor as $7.25 an hour, according to Economic Policy Institute's minimum wage tracker, and 5 other states have no minimum wage laws, meaning the federal minimum applies.
Yep.
As it becomes more and more expensive to get by in America, $15 is no longer an adequate goal. We need to go higher to reflect what it actually costs to live in America. Hold on to that
over
thought.
in a bit.
We'll go over it. In an analysis earlier this year, EPI estimated that a worker in one of the 20 states with a $7.25 minimum wage is 46% more likely to make less than $15 an hour than a worker in the other 30 states or District of Columbia with higher minimum wages. There's no part of this country where even a single adult without children can achieve an adequate standard of living with a wage of less than $15 an hour, EPI noted. With a lack of congressional action, the federal minimum wage has lost more than a third of its value since its inflation-adjusted high point of 1968. Sanders said Thursday that with living costs rising across the country, a $15 minimum wage would still be insufficient, a point that supporters of the new legislation echoed. As it becomes more and more expensive to get by in America, $15 is no longer an adequate goal. Stephen Prince, vice chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, said in the statement, that almost seems like an oxymoron, but whatever.
Yeah.
We need to go higher to reflect on what it actually costs to live in America. Sanders is right to revise his minimum wage push to $17 an hour to save workers across the country from further suffocation. Any thoughts before I get into this and why I think this sucks?
I mean, I probably could guess that it's because 17 isn't nearly enough even then. like to reach minimum wage standards of a living wage, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, so like the patriotic millionaires is definitely an oxymoron. But yeah, I mean, this seems like
Uh,
lip service because he's not going to be able to get this passed anyway.
right.
So we'll see.
So yeah, so I'm actually going to do some quick math. I should have done this beforehand. So assuming if you
Tied to
assuming
inflation.
if this goes through,
Okay.
um, so that's a yearly salary of about just over $35,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah.
So, question is, in this economy and these times, who can live on $35,000 a year?
Not many.
Not many. And I'm not sure if Jake did this on purpose. But in the beginning and in the middle of the article, he mentioned that people are looking for a living wage.
Yes.
And I'm going to get into why that's significant versus, and I'm sure you guys know this, but this is just kind of the tactic that just to kind of show that Bernie is actually not necessarily working in good faith here. But if we can go to the slides again. Oh, actually, I'm that's more of an article. But you know what? I think we got the point, so I'm not going to read that. I pulled this, and I forgot the website that I pulled this from. I should have put that in my notes. But it clearly talks about what is a minimum wage versus a living wage.
Yeah.
According to the article, people are looking for an increase in a living wage. So I'll have to find this article later, and I'll probably tell you guys in the chat and in the description after this. But according to this article, the defining living wage, also known as the livable wage, is the income required to cover basic family needs without reliance on outside assistance. So basically, loans. So really, when we talk about living wage, that doesn't account to the fact that, many of us, especially if you're a millennial, whatever, especially if you've gone to college, more likely you're going to have some loans, so that's not necessarily accounting into what people will want as a living wage. So basically, a living wage is what the basic, having money to cover the basics. So calculating living costs helps communities and policymakers better understand how much families must earn to maintain self-sufficiency and a minimum standard of living. Okay. Basic needs include food, housing, transportation, insurance, utilities, childcare, taxes, and inflation. However, other expenses such as vacation, dining out, and savings are typically not included. So, as I said, this just includes things to live at a minimum level, at least comfortably, like the basics. All right. The living wage should not be confused with the minimum wage. This is what Sanders is proposing, which is the minimum that an employer by law can pay an employee for an hour of labor. In contrast, a living wage is determined by the cost of covering basic needs in a particular area. So, difference is living wage is kind of more socialist in scope, basically, right? Whereas a minimum wage is tied to the employers. So the idea that Bernie is suggesting that $17 an hour is enough in this day and age is stupid.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm said that Bernie is not working in good faith here, because as I said, who can live on $35,000 a year in this day and age? Anyway, the U.S. Congress established a minimum wage in 1938 to provide a living wage. However, because the policy has not kept pace with inflation, the federal minimum wage fails to provide a minimum standard of living in many areas. Currently, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. A full-time worker making the minimum wage would earn $15,000 a year, just slightly above the $13,590 poverty guidelines for individuals. For workers providing for family members, earnings from a full-time minimum wage job would fall below the federal poverty line.
Right.
30 U.S. states currently have a minimum wage above the federal minimum. The District of Columbia has the highest minimum wage at $15.20. Wyoming and Georgia tie for the lowest minimum wage at $5.15. I made that in high school.
Yeah.
This was back in the late 90s, though.
Yeah. Florida used to be like 7, and then they finally changed it.
Right. Recently.
Right.
Or at least it's going to be changed.
So, yeah, it's gone up to like 10.
Right.
You know?
But the plan is 5.15 within the next few years, correct? Because
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Because that was a ballot initiative in Florida.
Yeah. Roger Meadows would be happy.
Right. Meanwhile, the living wage for an individual in DC is $20.80 an hour. That seems low, but while the living wage for an individual in Georgia is around $15.99. So, so I pulled up some states here, just to give you an idea of the minimum wage and what should be the
living wage.
Living wage, right? So DC, where I live, living wage for an individual is $20.80. Living wage for a family of 4 is $27 an hour. The minimum wage here is $15.20. The District of Columbia has the highest livable wage for an individual at $20.80 an hour, or $43,258 a year. That's low. I'll say that right now. That's low as hell. A family of 4 with 2 working adults requires $112,551 annually to maintain a minimum standard of living. Housing in DC is among the nation's most expensive, costing an individual over $18,000 a year. Childcare is also costly, setting a family of 4 back $22,492 a year, more than the same family's annual housing costs. Right? So, point being, very expensive. Minimum wage does not account for the living wage here. So basically, it's too low, even for 15. Let's go to New York. So, living wage for an individual, $20 an hour. A living wage for a family of 4 is $26.50 an hour. The minimum wage there currently is $13.20 an hour. So New York has one of the highest costs of living for an individual, primarily due to housing costs. The average person in the state will spend at least $16,000 annually on housing, while family of 4 will spend over $20,000. New Yorkers require $20.05 an hour, or $41,700 annually, to maintain a minimum standard of living. Again, that's low. New York's families need $26.50 or $110,225 annually to apply for a family of 4 with 2 working adults. The same family spends $23,000 on childcare and over $18,000 in taxes. Whew. So that's New York. Massachusetts. Living wage 19, just under 20. Living wage for a family for $29 an hour. And minimum wage there currently is 14, just over 14. So Massachusetts frequently ranks among the best states to live in. Can you zoom out, please?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, especially, but the price of entry is steep. The living wage for an individual is just under $20 an hour, or $41,416 a year. Of that, over $16,000 will be spent on housing alone. The living wage for a family of 4 is just under $30 an hour, or $121,414 a year, the nation's highest. Of that, $19,000 will go to taxes, and over $22,000 will be spent on housing. Childcare will cost $31,879 a year, the highest cost in Jesus Christ.
Yep.
All right. So these are the top 3 states in terms of cost of living. But Collin, you may ask, what about the poorest?
Collin, what about the poorest, Collin?
We got that too. We got that too. These, they're not, well, these are among the bottom of the list. But even here, you'll see something that is
South Dakota.
Here. Right. Living wage for an individual, just under $14 an hour. Living wage for family 4 is $20. And currently the minimum wage is just under $10 an hour.
Yeah.
South Dakota has the lowest minimum wage for individuals, requiring $13.87 an hour or $28,853 a year. The state's housing costs are among the lowest in the nation, sending individual back $6,784 a year. Family 4 with 2 working parents will spend just over $9,000 a year on housing and $15,000 on childcare. They will require $20 an hour or $83,274 a year to maintain a minimum standard of living.
Someone should probably do the math on like where the living wage is like the lowest, but the minimum wage is the highest. Like that ratio of like, so like if you wanted to move, you know, like which state has the best ratio on that, you know?
I could probably figure out that math, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, there's 50 states to look through, you know?
Right. Let's look at Kentucky. Living wage, $14. Living wage for a family 4 is $20. And the minimum wage currently is $7.25.
Right.
So living wage, so just under
$29,000 a year.
Housing costs, just under $7,000 a year. Annually spend just over $9,000 on housing, under $13,000 on transportation, and under $15,000
on childcare.
For childcare. Okay.
Okay.
Let's look at one more. Mississippi. If it's probably at the bottom, one at the bottom, if not the bottom.
Oh, for sure. Always.
Living wage for individual, $14. Okay. Living wage for family 4 is $19 an hour.
Still under 20, like just under.
Still under 20, right? Yeah. So minimum wage, $7.25.
Yeah.
Right. Mississippi has one of the lowest living costs in the country, but it also regularly ranks one of the worst states to live in.
Yep.
To maintain a living wage, an individual will need to make $14.20 an hour, or just over $29 a year. A family 4 requires $19 an hour, or over $80K a year.
Yeah.
Childcare costs are low, costing the same family just over $10,000 a year. Housing is also cheap at just over $9,000 annually.
I mean, that also depends on where you are in Mississippi, too. Like, you know, if you're in Biloxi, yes. You know, if you're in like the middle of Nowheresville, like you're not going to have any resources to buy anyway. Like, so you're not going to be able to get your kid to a hospital, or, you know what I mean? Like, so that cost is like secret cost that isn't added up, you know?
Right.
So,
but the point is, all of this kind of shows, the moral of the story is, what Bernie is proposing is shit.
Even in Mississippi, for a family of 4, you're not covering that.
Right.
You're barely over an individual living wage in Mississippi there.
Right. So 17 just across the board, depending on the state, is not nearly enough at all. You know, and I was talking with Indy about this like over the weekend when I pulled this article. And he was like, really, ideally, really the fight for 15 really has been bullshit this whole time. And I think we've said this on the show before.
Yeah.
Really, people should have been fighting for $30 an hour, right from the jump at least, but being able to compromise there to go down. So maybe it'd be more realistic now to be pushing for, or at least the compromise position to be like around 20.
Yeah.
You could say at this point. But Bernie, and we've seen him do
18 for a family of 4, like
Right.
78 a year. Like that's no chump change either for the lowest living wage for a family of 4. So
yeah.
and what's Bernie asking for? 32-hour work week petition?
Well, so this is the other thing that Indy pulled for me. So this is the other thing that Bernie is now proposing is, like a 32-hour work week. But even then, that's just kind of really shit because
if you're working per hour at minimum
if you're
wage,
working per hour, right? If it got increased to 17,
32, do the math. 32 for a week times 17 is how much a week?
32
times
17.
Do.
Just over $500.
Okay, so you times that
52.
by
52.
4, right? So
that's less. That's just 28,000 a year. So
which doesn't even make Mississippi's, right? What was Mississippi's? If I go back for a yearly, 29.
29.
Right. So somewhere our math ain't adding up.
Right. The math ain't mathing. So yeah. So Bernie is shit on 2 things. Well, technically 3 things. Number 1, proposing a $17 minimum wage, which is not going to pass.
Yeah.
Number 1. So the idea, like, he's doing this now when Republicans have control of the House, is just dumbassery to me.
It feels like all these crumbs are adding up to moldy bread. That's what it seems like.
Honestly, I just feel like Bernie is doing this to kind of appease Biden, just to kind of give the illusion that Biden is actually trying to do shit.
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of where I think this is kind of coming from.
It's also coming up to election cycle. We got to have the Democrats appear benevolent,
Right.
So,
but the idea, like, you're trying to raise the minimum wage, but lessen the work week. Yeah, it's so.
I mean, not that I get both things, but you got to do the math right to be like, okay, if we're only going to work a 32-hour work week, what should be the minimum wage? And then shoot for that. If you're not going to get it, you're not going to get the other one either.
But the thing is, I think just in the article, and I think this is something that I want our audience to take away. We really should be talking about a minimum wage at all. We really should be talking about a living wage. What is like? That's what really that's really should be the grand prize of it all. It's like we should be demanding a living wage. Because as I said, that's just covering the basics of what you need in order to survive.
Yeah.
The minimum wage is just basically whatever the capitalists in our society basically determine that they want to give you for the labor that you're doing, which is often going to be way lower than what their profits are going to be that they're going to pocket at your expense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, that's why I wanted to bring up this article, because again, it gives the illusion that Bernie is trying to do something, in the midst now that it's election season.
Yeah.
And Democrats haven't done shit really. So
they can't do shit.
But
they're going to get blocked everywhere.
Right. But at least they can say, oh, we tried to do it or whatever,
There's enough, shittier Democrats that also are going to vote no. So, but
so it would have made more sense, like as late as last year when there was actually control, and like if Biden really cared, kind of got like mansion and cinema in line to actually pass 15.
Yeah.
And other Democrats who like basically fell back because those two would kind of take the heat for them. That would have made a lot more sense then. But then even then, it's like, why didn't you push for 17 then?
Yeah.
Or better yet, more.
Right.
Like,
I mean, that's my thing. If you're not going to get it, like, might as well go for broke. Like,
right.
So, but anyway, meanwhile, in Pakistan, their protests have broke out because of the removal of Amir Khan of a trial. They arrested him. So protests erupt across Pakistan after former PM Imran Khan arrested. "If you want to send me to jail, I am prepared for it," said the embattled politician just hour before he was taken into custody under heavy guard. So it's by John Quealy over at Common Dreams. So supporters of Imran Khan took to the streets of Pakistan nationwide in an angry protest Tuesday after the former prime minister was arrested on corruption and embezzlement charges. Allegations the champion cricketer turned progressive politician has denied and says are politically motivated. The protests erupted in various cities, including Karachi, Islamabad, Peshawar, and Lahore, clashed with police who used water cannons and tear gas in an effort to control the crowds. In Islamabad, for a scheduled court appearance over the allegations, Khan was taken into custody upon the arrival. Video footage showed him being taken away by a throng of police in riot gear and placed into an armored vehicle. So, I pressed the wrong presentation button. But, so this is also from the 1440 newsletter Indy sent me today. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested on corruption charges yesterday, intensifying political tensions ahead of an October election. He was taken into custody by a paramilitary group upon arriving in a court hearing in Islamabad, where he faced separate corruption allegations. The former cricket star was elected in 2018, but faced criticism over corruption and economic issues, leading to a no-confidence vote against him in 2022. Khan opposed the vote, dissolved parliament, and accused his opponents of a politically motivated plot, even suggesting U.S. involvement. God forbid U.S. involvement, Collin.
Right.
Like that doesn't seem highly likely. Khan's arrest threatens to worsen the political and economic unrest in Pakistan, while the government denies political motivation, asserts the rule of law. Khan accuses the government of delaying national elections and colluding with the military. Khan remains popular as inflation has risen to above 36% under the new government and as the country seeks an International Monetary Fund bailout. The arrest sparked violent protests throughout the country. Khan is expected to appear in an anti-corruption tribunal today. So this was then, right? Before this happened. So here they are, right? They've got Amir in tow. There they are. There's Amir there. Right? Quite a force for one dude. So that's, I mean, I like their armored Toyota Helix though. They're learning from those Al-Qaeda guys doing the same. So friend of the show, Fee, breaking uprising in Pakistan, what we know so far. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested and taken into holding in Islamabad. Some are reporting this was a capture by a U.S.-backed coup government. Subsequently, the majority of the population supporting him turned to mass protest. Unconfirmed reports states that almost all military bases and many government buildings in Pakistan were attacked, and the army command has fled the country. Current PM Sharif also fled to London. Okay. Internet and mass communications were shut off as authorities prep for more unrest. Implications are vast. Pakistan is on its way to de-dollarization, ditching U.S. dollar to buy Russian oil. Khan has refused to sanction Russia. Pakistan is a nuclear country that has historically unstable relations with India. Having said that, they have been playing nice with BRICS countries, and
Right.
Amir Khan has, voiced support of that as well. So, I think that's part of it. The West is losing allies here very quickly.
Right.
And so let me pull up, if I go here and I go to open speaker notes, there we go. I'll grab, we'll go here. Here's Fee's tweet. She had some video, so I wanted to pull that up. And messages close. So here's some of the videos of the protest. If I can, right? They're burning stuff. But I don't necessarily know how they're gonna get these out now that like the internet went down. So we'll see how that goes. But pay attention to like PCI, which is the party that Amir Khan has been part of, right? Is posting a bunch. If you want to go follow PCI like official on Twitter. But yep, fire and smoke, more fire and smoke. I saw another one where a guy was just literally taking a hammer to a brick building, so, but anyway, thoughts so far, Collin?
I mean, someone said, Google basically said, "This, I see U.S. fingerprints all over this," and it definitely, it definitely seems to be like our country's involvement. Like, it just screams coup to me. Like,
right.
And again, I think the idea of like, it just seems the US, well, the West really wants all the global South to kind of fall in line in terms of, sentiment regarding Russia and China at the moment. And I think especially with the rise of BRICS, they're standing up against that. And I feel like Pakistan is kind of like on the fence on that, but at the same time, they're kind of like moving,
especially with Russia working on peace talks with Syria and things like that. Like, West is getting worried about how much hold they have over the Middle East, which means what, Collin? What are we there for? To uphold our petrodollar?
Right.
Like,
So yeah, it just kind of looks very much like cuckoo all over it. So
right.
Yeah.
Some couscous. But this is from The Guardian. And they have a little nice wrapped up video of stuff, so we'll play that.
नहीं मत खोल मैं तो इसको मुझे रखो स्टेज के ऊपर ला देना
हमें कोई इस तरह का ड्रामा ना करे, सीधी तरह वारंट दे। कोई इस वक्त केस नहीं है, लेकिन मैं
I don't have any case against me that warrants arrest.
तौर पे तैयार हुआ हूँ।
I am mentally ready to be
जेल में
jailed.
डालना है, मैं तैयार हूँ जेल में।
You want to send me to jail? I am prepared for it. Khan faces several corruption cases against him, including terrorism charges. Officials from the anti-corruption body said arrest warrants for Khan had been issued the previous week. So we've seen this corruption move used before, Collin.
Yes.
with Lula and one of the other, I think Argentina, right? Someone will correct me.
Think.
One of the
That's
leaders
right.
there. They're using these corruption charges whenever progressive stuff. It's vehicles for coups, essentially. So we got a little more of this article. According to the WAPO, Khan's arrest comes after days of mounting public dispute between the former prime minister, who was ousted from his office last year, the current government, and the country's powerful military. Khan had recently accused a senior officer of having been part of an assassination attempt against him last year, which he narrowly survived. The former prime minister's party said there were political motives behind the arrest linked to the current government under Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Khan's supporters say the government is acting undemocratically, having repeatedly sought to delay key regional votes this year from Khan, performed above expectations in by-elections last October. I think Convo Couch did some observing of that. I don't know if they were there, but they talked about today on their show about this. They talked about that they have like biometric voting stuff, right? Where you have to like put in your fingerprint to vote, that kind of thing. And that they took those away during this cycle. So, right. And Imran was upset about that because they kind of knew he would win. And they didn't want it tampered with. So Pakistan's Interior Minister Rana Sanullah told reporters that Khan's arrest was in accordance with the law and ordered by National Accountability Bureau, NAB. NAB is an independent institution, and we have never tried to control it, Sanullah explained. I press X for doubt. In a video message filmed hours ahead of his arrival in Islamabad and released by the Pakistani Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI party, just prior to his arrest, Khan said he was prepared for whatever came next. And here he is, right, in that video we watched a second ago. My reply to the ISPR and the two main reasons on which the PDM and its patrons are trying to arrest me: to stop me from campaigning, because inshallah, when the elections are announced, I will hold rallies; to restrain me from mobilizing the people for a vigorous mass movement in support of the Constitution in case of violation of the Supreme Court order and deviation from the Constitution by the PDM government and its patrons regarding the holding of elections. So he wants to go after their election practice, right? So, right. Speaking in Urdu, Khan said the reasons behind the potential arrest were twofold. He said to stop me from campaigning when new elections are announced, and two, to restrain me from mobilizing the people for a vigorous mass movement, which he says has been violated by his political opponents in the ruling government. Come to me with warrants, my lawyers will be there. Khan says in the video, if you want to send me to jail, I am prepped for it. So,
Ooh.
Right? Taking the, like, come get me,
Right.
So, but,
yeah. In the name of organizing the people.
Yes. Yeah, like, please make me a martyr, essentially.
Yes, exactly. Like, yeah. Please do it. Please do it and let the people respond in kind. Like, yeah. So, I think it's just kind of interesting, like, especially given that it seems that the West has their criminal hands on Pakistan in this way, that, I think basically just the idea that they're kind of, I'll say this, like, if our leaders had any, like, balls like Khan does, I think we'll be a lot better off, honestly. But even in the midst of the opposition that they have, but we don't. But I think it's kind of cool to see in other countries how they're trying to organize themselves. And I think, their leaders are willing to die for a cause that's bigger than them, in terms of ensuring that their countries are in better shape than how they came in. So I
imagine if our politicians did anything like that.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of a decent getaway, but I think that's kind of questionable if this politician, well, technically too, are kind of doing anything like that in kind. So we talked about Bernie earlier in my last segment, we're going to talk about Khanna now. Actually, this was kind of, not to say this was new to me, this issue, but I've heard murmurings of this in terms of organization that both Reef and I, and probably many of you all are familiar with. But this week, they're actually, I think, in light of other issues regarding universal healthcare in this country, they actually are making a move in this now with an actual bill. So Khanna is going to present a bill to free people from their medical debt.
Gotcha.
So he had a town hall about this on Monday, which just looking at the analytics of that video wasn't very well viewed at all. I think it only got like less than 100 views at the time when I looked at it last night, which considering, and I do have some criticism on this, but I think the issue of itself is a worthwhile cause to fight for. Because we probably know people in our lives who struggle with medical debt, especially large medical debt, especially for a huge medical issue. That you're kind of saddled with even after insurance takes care of part of your payments. So as I said, Khanna had what was a part of this town hall on Monday, which was hosted by Our Revolution, which is Bernie's group that he founded during his tenure election. So according to, hold on, let's see if I get going. Another Common Dreams article. This is written by Jessica Corbett, where she writes, Freedom from Medical Debt Campaign to launch with virtual town hall. The new push is led by Our Revolution, along with Khanna and Bernie Sanders, Medicare for All supporters who are working on legislation to tackle medical debt. So she writes, I'm 72 and now live with my daughter after losing everything because of medical bills. I had $250,000 in debt saved up for retirement, and then disaster hit, several bouts of cancer, and a stroke in 2009. That's the story of Amazonian Deanne McNeil, a patient advocate and member of Our Revolution, which is working with U.S. Rep. Khanna, Bernie Sanders, the National Consumer Law Center, and TRIDEC DC on a new campaign.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
Basically. You should have played that for the other.
I know.
Segment.
I was thinking that too.
The Freedom from Medical Debt Initiative launched on Monday with a virtual town hall. I wouldn't owe anything if hospitals didn't gouge patients, said Mary Wills of Texas. The cost of an MRI in the hospital was 8 times the cost of an outpatient MRI and 80 times outsourced MRIs. Right. I owe over $8,000.
Yep.
The virtual town hall is set to feature similar stories, including that of Washingtonian Kristen Noreen, who barely survived being hit by a vehicle while on her bicycle in 2010. After enduring a brain injury and having her hand amputated and reattached, Noreen is still paying off medical bills for pain treatments not covered by insurance. Fellow patient advocate and Our Revolution member Elizabeth McLaughlin of Indiana, who received a $20,000 bill for an emergency visit in 2015, also plans to join the town hall along with Khanna. We need to strategize for legislation Bernie Sanders and I are doing and figure out how we can finally end medical debt in this country, Khanna said in a Monday video promoting the event. The lawmakers have worked together for years. Khanna co-chaired Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign and both support Medicare for All, for which the senator has long led the fight on Capitol Hill. Not really, but we'll continue.
Yeah.
In a Saturday email about the town hall, Our Revolution, which came out of Sanders' 2016 presidential run, said that as the senator and Rep. Premier Jayapal prepare to reintroduce Medicare for All in Congress, I'll talk about that in a second. We are organizing people struggling with medical debt to speak up and fight for healthcare justice. The Hill, which first reported on the town hall, noted that in addition to backing Khanna and Sanders' forthcoming bill, patient advocates are hoping to pressure President Joe Biden to use executive action to help stop price gouging for vulnerable patients and a variety of predatory debt collection tactics, and ensure that people seeking medical assistance have financial aid and free or reduced price care available. Highlighting that medical debt is the #1 reason for personal bankruptcies in the United States, Our Revolution Executive Director Joseph Gigarsi told the outlet, "We can stop that, and the president has the power." As part of the campaign calling for Congress and the president to deliver systemic solutions to this massive healthcare injustice, organizers have launched a website to collect medical debt stories and hope to get at least one from every congressional district.
Okay.
So we talked offline about this just before we went live, and I'm sure we're kind of bringing it up again. And as I said to you, I'm mixed on this.
Okay.
On one hand, is medical debt something worth fighting for? Absolutely. You know, I just, as an aside, I personally just paid off. So it wasn't much, but you know, like kind of tight finances right now. I just recently paid off some of my medical bills that I had just from normal doctor visits because I am immune compromised. So and now I owe another bill because I just went to the doctor recently for another checkup. So, so yes, it's a worthwhile thing that I think people should be fighting for. The problem that I have with this, and we're going to watch part of the town hall where Rokan spoke. The whole thing is about, I think, just under an hour long. This just kind of seemed to come out of left field for me in terms of there was no marketing or no talk about this. I'm sure there probably were murmurings, but there wasn't a major thing, especially independent media.
Not in our circles, right?
Not within our circles that people were talking about this in a way that would have been a huge lead up to, you know, to Roe speaking at this event. But you notice how when a certain person 2 years ago had an event like this regarding Medicare for All, that the people that should have been there, the politicians that should have been there, didn't show up, right? And that town hall had, I think about, if I remember correctly, had 10,000 people watching. This town hall with Rokana had in it, as I checked yesterday, only had less than 100 views on it when I pulled a clip for it last night. So to go from Force to Vote, where you had more of an interest and people were invested, especially given that we were in the middle of a pandemic at the time, to now where less than 100 people are watching something, which I do think is important, but there was no lead up to it. So it just kind of seemed to go under the radar if we didn't hear about it, you know, at least in my case on Twitter.
Well, video time, huh?
Yeah. So not going to play all of it because it's mostly stories of people sharing about their experiences. So, and, you know, I don't think we necessarily need to know the despair that people are going through. Right. But I do want to play what Khanna is talking about, because he's also been on mainstream media talking about this now, that actually that there's a bill that they're trying to promote in Congress next week. So we are going to play a little bit in terms of what he said, and probably will stop at a couple of places just to kind of critique, a couple of things that he says here.
Cool.
So.
Now it's my honor to welcome our next guest, United States Representative Khanna. Has been a longtime progressive.
Who is this Hunger Games host character that they're employing to host this?
That is hold on, let me pull up his name.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Givarhayes.
Yeah.
Givarhayes.
Yes, he's the executive director for Our Revolution. So
gotcha.
Ally in United States House, and he's a partner with us on this campaign to end medical debt once and for all. As many of you know, he served as a co-chair of Bernie's 2020 campaign, and he is an active member of Our Revolution. If you have questions for Representative Khanna, please put them in the Q&A. Ro, appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be here and listen to the stories that we've collected. Tell us a little bit about what you and your colleagues are thinking about in terms of solutions to address the problem of medical debt.
Well, first of all, Joseph, thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Which was essentially, tell us about the bill you made.
Right. Going back to the early 2000s and fighting to end medical debt. The only sad thing is we still have medical debt that's growing, even though you've been leading this fight. And we have raised a lot of awareness, but we've now got to actually end the debt. And thank you to Betsy and all of the stories. I mean, it is so common to hear about people who have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of credit card debt. I mean, some where they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills, but many Americans where they're sitting with this debt, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, never ending, paying the late interest fees on it, just because they broke a bone and went to the ER, or because they had emergency surgery, or because they had an unexpected medical procedure. This is just wrong. You should not go into debt because you fall sick. And I met about a year ago with a group in my office, March for Medicare for All, and Savage Joy, and they've got an organization in 60 different states. And someone brought a bill for probably about 1,000 pages. It was bigger than any book in my room of all the bills that she had. And it's just outrageous that we're allowing this to happen in the.
Yep.
So just to give some context, so we were aware of this. So those of you who are familiar with the March for Medicare for All, Savage Joy and a couple of other representatives did meet with Ro Khanna in Congress last spring to talk about Medicare for All, but Joy also used that opportunity to kind of share her stories regarding the medical debt and the bills that she's had.
Right.
So from that,
right, he's going to try and give a crumb, a Band-Aid,
Right.
Okay.
So just to kind of give you that
States
context.
of America. And that's why Bernie Sanders and I are teaming up. We've been working for about 6 months, and it's in the final stages to be introduced of legislation. And Joseph, I know you've been very, very helpful in that process as well. And the legislation will say that we're going to end all medical debt, cancel it. If you have medical debt, it's erased to zero. Now the hospitals need to wipe it out. And
then what, Ro? Then what? Okay, we get rid of debt. You know what still happens? People going into medical debt.
Well, hold on. Before we go further, he said something interesting. He said that they've been working on it from the last 6 months. So they just finalized it. So let's do a little math. So now they're doing this now. It's now May. If they've been working on it since 6 months, meaning they started working on this since November, October,
Right.
November. Joy and Ricky and some other people met with him last April.
Yes.
So what does that tell you? They started working on this bill probably after the elections, the midterms rather. So instead of working with urgency to craft a bill, maybe and again, I'm just thinking like
after they started losing.
Right. Maybe thinking from an activist mindset, because and I'm going to be very fair, because I mentioned several streams ago, like the organization that I'm familiar with, we supported in drafting a bill towards teacher retention in DC. Now, it's a lot of work, you know, like you have to, like, there were notes that we had to take, and things had to be tweaked, and the language had to be right, you know, like, you know, so it took us maybe about 6 months, like that process of going back and forth, like not me directly, but then like my executive director, but our executive director asked us like what we should prioritize, and we told him, we voted for it, you know, and all that. He took the notes, you know, the senior members of our organization took the notes, passed it off to our councilman. It took about 6 months. So I don't want to, you know, so I'm sure like working on bills like this on the federal level, I'm sure, as he said, it was like 1,000 pages that had to be looked over and tweaked.
Yeah.
So, you know, but here's my issue with this. You started working on this, assuming if I get the timeline right, in November. So I'm assuming you worked on this post midterms. Why didn't you work with any urgency to try and create something, or at least mention this well before midterms as incentive for Democrat voters to vote for the party?
Right.
Like, so this just kind of implies you're waited, and now that the Republicans are in office with a bill, now you're bringing it.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned this at all, as far as I know, on mainstream media or any other independent platform that he's been on, like since. Has not mentioned it. And again, I'm going to give grace, especially if it's a bill. You may not necessarily be able to say anything until a certain point. But, you know, as I said, there was no build up to this because everyone is talking about Medicare for all. Now, all of a sudden, you're switching your plan to let's cancel medical debt.
Right.
Again, I think, is that valid thing to fight for? Yes. But those are conversations that I think, especially in independent media, should have been had all along for like the last year or so.
Yep.
Like, this shouldn't be no surprise to people, like, especially given that they had a virtual town hall on this on Monday. No one knew about it. Like, no one was promoting this. Like, and again, I just happened to find this on Twitter randomly, and I felt like it was a story that should be talked about. Like, but again, going back to a few years ago, when Jimmy and Bree and Crystal and other people, like Kyle, had that town hall regarding forced to vote.
Yeah.
Khanna and the squad were nowhere to be found.
Yep.
And they had a lot of views for that stream.
Well,
but yeah, you only had 100 people coming to this.
Yes.
For an issue that relates to Medicare for all. It doesn't make sense.
If they wipe it out, then there is some federal funding that can be available to them for doing the right thing. If they choose not to wipe it out, they have no choice. We will then cancel it. But the idea is just to eliminate this medical debt. It's something that hospitals are making way too much profit off, and we can provide some assistance for the hospitals who will do the right thing. The federal government can do that. It's affordable, and it is the right thing to do. And frankly, it's the first step. And then we need Medicare for all, so we don't have this continual debt piling up. But expect in the next couple months us to introduce it. And Joseph, what everyone here on the call is doing and sharing their stories is so important, because this is something that members of Congress across the country need to realize affects real people, is affecting their constituents, and they should sign on. Frankly, even if they don't agree on Medicare for all, they should at least sign on to the proposition that people pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in debt.
And Representative, let me ask you this. So canceling medical debt.
So it's funny now, I'm looking at this for a time now, but like, Ro was mentioning like, oh, it should be on the hospitals, right?
Right.
Many hospitals now, they're not necessarily public anymore. They're private corporations now.
Yep.
So you can't necessarily blame the hospitals that put people in debt. It's the lobbyists or the corporations that own these hospitals and like Big Pharma and that's what something he doesn't mention. And you have to wonder why he doesn't. You know, he's just kind of putting the blame on the hospitals as if they're responsible for the bills that we pay, which it could, I don't want to necessarily put the blame on the hospitals when it should be the corporations that own these hospitals that are responsible. So interesting how Ro kind of doesn't mention like the corruption at the very top.
Yep.
On this at all in terms of people being in medical debt.
Not surprised though.
Yeah. Okay, we can continue.
Is a core part of our policy agenda. It's being done around the country. Jurisdictions are states, cities, DC government, Cleveland recently are passing legislation to use American Rescue Act funds to wipe out medical debt. That being said, that is, that's an important fix, right? We want to wipe the slate clean. What do we got to do beyond Medicare for all? What do we have to do to make sure that even if Kristen's medical debt gets wiped out, or Denise's medical debt gets wiped out, or Betsy's medical debt gets wiped out, what do we got to do to make sure the system doesn't keep operating like it does? Because we do know, as one of our town hall folks said, it seems like every time I go see a healthcare provider, I get a bill, and it's pretty outrageous.
So stop right there.
Well,
so basically he just asked, okay, so let's assume that we get this thing passed, that medical debt will get passed. What's the next step from there to get Medicare for all? So that all of that essentially is what he's asking. So let's see what Rose says. Yeah.
Solution to Kristen and Denise's issues are Medicare for all, because that would not have copays. You wouldn't have these outrageous premiums. Everyone would pay a small fee to have national health insurance, and you wouldn't have these outrageous bills. But short of that, we've got to restrict the ability of the people to have outrageous bills, these hospitals. I mean, there's got to be a restriction on harassing, on collecting medical debt from individuals. We can say that, they can go after, I guess, the private insurance companies until we have private insurance companies, but they should not be allowed to go after the patient, the individual. But, that is a cosmetic, it's a cosmetic change, a Band-Aid solution. What we really need is...
that's a Band-Aid solution, he says. What we really need is Medicare for all, right?
Right.
So why didn't he force a vote on that? Why didn't he, in the middle of a pandemic, when you had all the leverage?
You had all the leverage and you had all the attention.
Playing off Nancy Pelosi's own ego and ambition. Like,
but also, you notice how the question was asked, what's the next step to getting Medicare for all? He didn't
right.
answer.
No.
He just kind of went back to, oh, we need to do this, this, this. So, and I want to.
Well, his answer was that we need to do Medicare for, like, that was his answer. How do we do it?
Right.
Well, we need to do it. Like, that was it.
Right. So, and I don't want to necessarily throw Medicare for under the bus.
Yeah.
But that's what I've asked them, online is, what's your plan moving forward? Because Ro Khanna, and I think he's being very careful here, like he's trying to still kind of give the illusion of him being progressive in terms of saying, yeah, we need Medicare for all, but he doesn't give any direction as to what are the next steps now in order to get there. And I asked this concerns people from March for Medicare for All, like, what are your next steps in order to get there?
Yeah.
I hate saying this, and I don't want to call them out like that. They didn't give me an answer.
Right.
And I said that in terms of, and I mentioned this on stream, like, there was a possibility that my mom needed dialysis. Fortunately, right now, like, she doesn't need to, so thank God she doesn't. At least for now. But my mom is turning 80, this summer, like, and her health has been an issue, since, I was a teenager. Like, she's had, like, ongoing issues, like, so she's gotten away with it for now, but there's no telling how long it will be before I will have to kind of think about this in terms of her healthcare again.
Yeah.
And I asked, people in that organization, like, out concern of my mom and anger, like, for the possibility of her saying, I don't know how I'm going to pay for my care. And I'm on Medicaid, like, and they couldn't give me an answer.
Yeah.
They just said, I'm sorry your mom was going through this. So I was very frustrated with the idea of, like, but this is what you guys should be doing right now. And these are the things that you should be telling Ro Khanna, like, this is what you should be doing. And this is how we can use our grassroots organizing to help elevate this issue so that people can feel more confidence in people that are involved, in this, that there is some movement going, that there's actually, like, a progression going. As I said, this just feels like random. And I think this is only because, Ro Khanna said in interviews, there's no way they're going to get Medicare for all at this point.
Right.
Not. So, as you said, Reef, this is just merely, and I'm fine with a Band-Aid depending on the situation, but you also need to kind of take care of the root cause of the issue and kind of get to that.
With anything, you could have thrown a lot of stuff into this bill. Like, you could have thrown dealing with like, pharmaceutical oversight. Like, I mean, like, markups, and you could have put restrictions on these companies anywhere. I guarantee you there isn't. Or for insurance companies.
Right.
Like, about how much they need to pay for particular things. You could have thrown that in here too. And how much coverage they need to give. Like, if you're gonna if you're gonna ask for, like, if you're gonna play political games about trying to appear progressive, like, go for it.
Especially if you're making this an executive order.
And meanwhile, what's he going to tell you to do on this next election? Like,
vote for Joe Biden. But again, but here's my other thing. Because we've seen this with student loan debt. Like, what if it gets challenged in court?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that I'm thinking about now in terms of what we've seen over the past couple of years. Like, and I'm sure they weren't necessarily going to answer this here. But in my mind, I'm kind of like, okay, so let's say, yeah, it goes through. what if it gets challenged? How are you going to counter that? You know, number one, you have to get Joe Biden to kind of convince him to do it. So what are you going to say or do to convince him to do this executive order? Like, what are you demanding from him? Or are you willing to withhold from him? And again, you have leverage now, given that you're in an election year. You could say, you know, like, I will not vote, like, I will not endorse you.
Yeah.
Like, you can very easily say that right now. But you won't, because
what do you think he says next? That's the question. You know,
well,
he's rambled for
yeah, but let's see what he does say next.
A long-term solution, which is Medicare for all.
And Bernie, Representative Jayapal, you other members of the CPC are going to be rolling out Medicare for all next Monday, and then after that, legislation on ending medical debt, canceling medical debt. You know, one of the things that I think is significant is that hospitals get billions of dollars from the U.S. government. Hospitals are federal contractors. They get billions of dollars. The majority of their revenue is from programs like Medicare and Medicaid. And the administration has used that funding authority to, you know, do some regulation. Do you agree that the, companies, hospitals, whether for-profit, not-profit, that get federal funding should be held to a higher standard? They should not be able to price gouge patients and engage in these predatory collections practices?
Yes, and that's where I think the executive order comes in. I mean, you don't need even Congress for that. What you can have is the president signing legislation, signing an executive order that says if you get federal funding, you can't engage in price gouging. You can't engage in collections from the individual. You can, you simply cannot go and put a debt collector on an individual or stick individuals with these bills, or we're going to stop the federal funding. We're going to stop your hospital from getting the federal funding. Now, our bill, Sanders and my bill, eliminates it completely, whether you're getting federal funding or not. And it actually allows hospitals to apply to a federal fund to make sure that they have the incentive to do it. So it's the cleanest way of doing it. But short of that, we can stop at least the most egregious practices with the leverage that we have with the federal funds. And that is why we've got to push the president to do it. And, you know, as it turns out with a lot of things, Joseph, good policy that helps people turns out to be good politics. You know, if you do things that help people's lives, if you make childcare free or childcare $10 a day, as I've been pushing, if you make it Medicare for all so that people have health care without premiums and without huge deductibles, if you help make college free or vocational education free, guess what? People tend to think that that's good politics because they see that this is something actually that's going to help my life. If the president says, I'm going to eliminate medical debt, think about the millions of Americans who he could help with a stroke of his pen. And if he says, I'm going to go push for that if I get reelected, think about all of the people whose lives he could change. I mean, imagine wiping out credit card bills, just like we're trying to wipe out student debt. Even more urgent, I would say, is wiping out medical debt.
That's right. And the truth is, I think this would be resonant with the American people generally, and with progressives in particular. But it would be resonant because with the American people generally, because, you know, medical debt, as we said earlier on this call, number one cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States. Even after we passed the ACA, it's outrageous. And the president, the administration has the power to fix it. You know, the administration has issued a couple of executive orders on medical debt, around credit reporting, around urging all the agencies of government to work together on medical debt. But at the end of the day, what we haven't gotten, and then what we are collectively pushing for, is making sure the president uses the power he has as a regulator and funder of the American healthcare industry, using that to police the worst behavior.
Any final thoughts on this? I have a couple here.
I mean,
I just
and we'll get to that last slide too before we get to a lot of it. But what are they doing? One, what have they done with student debt? We've covered that on this channel before, recently, in fact.
Last week, 2 weeks ago now.
You know, he's talking about a stroke of a pen. Those pens have been stroked, like, already, friend, like, on student debt. So how are you going to, a strongly worded letter? Right. You know, I mean, you're obviously trying to implore him to use this. The issue is, Collin, how are they going to get a vote on any of these two things? Yes, they made the bill. That doesn't mean that people vote on the bill.
Right.
What do they need to do for that to happen?
Right. And I just thought of this. Like, have the bigger channels talked about this?
No. I mean, it just happened.
No, I mean, but the big story obviously is Crystal and Kyle got married.
Yeah.
But they're allegedly like proponents for Medicare for All.
Right.
I mean,
meanwhile,
excuse them a little bit, but like you would think that all these channels that would say like, "Oh, I want Medicare for All," would actually promote this, especially given that this is Bernie's organization. That you'll feel like they'll just kind of go in and kind of fall in line and actually trying to promote this as best as they can. Crickets. So, you know,
you have this to finish this out.
I do. I think in a way it gives me no pleasure to refer to this.
Yeah.
But I think it's important because you know, like I had my concerns about Savage Joy, you know, and Ricky, you know, going to Congress because I just felt like it was more of a political ploy for Roe versus for them actually getting something passed. But you know, like I was just curious to see how this would, you know, amount to, you know, in terms of them meeting with Roe last year. And, you know, so Savage Joy tweeted this out on Monday. And she said, "Beyond disappointed right now. As some of you know, March for Medicare for All rep with Khanna in his DC office in April 2022, 13 months ago, to discuss national improved Medicare for All and medical debt. I brought over $15,000 in medical debt I accrued despite having insurance. We spoke in depth for over an hour, and by the time we left, it was decided that we would be doing Medicare debt cancellation legislation. Medicare for All then met with 2 other reps and a legislative assistant to get them on board with the bill, and were successful. We've exchanged constant communication with Roe and his team about the medical debt cancellation legislation. We had a Zoom meeting last month with them and discussed the bill, what is in it, and what needed to be added. Because of our continuous involvement for over a year, we were told that we'd be sent the bill before it goes to the floor so we can give our input. A few days ago, Roe sent me a DM promoting a live stream forum he is doing with Our Revolution tonight on our bill we've worked on. Today, I was told that there are 3 other speakers, none of whom are for March for Medicare for All. We have been proud of being a group of volunteer organizers who are able to get legislation going because of our tremendously hard work. We were the catalyst for this bill, and we put a lot of work into it. But we now find ourselves removed from the discussion. We are still incredibly proud of what we accomplished and will continue to do great things. However, I am not to be quiet when being slighted." So they weren't even, I mean, we'll mention them, but they weren't given the platform to share.
Yep.
So what does that tell you?
They don't want people willing to say what they actually want and how this might be issues.
But I just feel like this is just kind of his way, because as I said, our revolution, this is like, and we kind of talk about this with Chris Smalls, like the moment you step in the White House or in Congress, you're playing by their rules. Yeah. And actually, just as an aside, I had a problem with Joy actually going there, given that she is like mostly blind. Like, why can Ro go to her?
Yeah.
Like, why
you got no friends in Washington, D.C. Your enemy is laughing at you.
Like, why can Ro take the time to go to Pennsylvania to meet with Joy? Like, why should she have to spend money and like hotel in order to go there? Like, so, but this is what they do. They take grassroots activism and they morph it into something that is not reflective of what constituents want.
Well,
but then they take that narrative and then run with it for it to die.
I wonder if they're willing to, if they don't get a vote, for this, right? Are they willing to start working on ballot initiatives state by state for this?
Right. And that's and we talked about that, just before we went live. This kind of thing, like canceling medical debt, to me, and this is just to me, seems to be, it would be more effective, as you said, maybe as a ballot initiative measure. So going statewide to promote this and seeing how that grows from there. And then you're able to build that coalition, around that idea to bring it up on the federal level. As I said, this just seemed to come out of nowhere, like in terms of Rose suddenly talking about it. And I'm fairly certain that he's trying to use this for his presidential ambitions in the near future. We're not sure when that's going to happen, but he'll be able to say now, oh, I promoted this and all this kind of stuff, and use that as his platform on the backs of people who actually did the work and the research to try to get this bill through. It's not going to pass. You don't have the support for it in the way that we did for Force the Vote several years ago. No one has talked about this at all. There's been no promotion for this at all. So where's the support going to come from this?
Yeah.
Independent media has not talked about this at all. So, but that, again, that's what I said. If this was your plan, but if it was leading towards Medicare for all, if there were tangible steps that you were looking to do towards getting there, I can be for this. But again, as you said, this just feels like a compromise of the compromise. They know they can't get Medicare for all, but they know that they have to do something for Joy and them. So this was kind of like the compromise that they came to, but that's not what Joy kind of went in with.
No.
She went in with both.
Yeah.
And settled for one, which is not going to go anywhere.
Yes.
So,
like, it's performative nonsense anyway. They're not going to be able to get a bill for it. Like, and you're not even willing to take that performative measure there. So, like, why are we still engaging with these folks? Anyway.
Right.
Let's get to our next story and finish stuff out. So, I brought this. This is from the Gray Zone. Alex Rubenstein. He's wanting to talk about a particular instance where Ukrainians decided to have a poll on who they should murder next after a car bomb of another Russian journalist. So, essentially taking the epic rap battles of history out. But Ukrainian media asks who should be next after car bombing of Russian writer. A Ukrainian media group partnered with BBC, Der Spiegel, and other Western outlets polled readers on which Russian intellectual should be assassinated following a car bomb attack on writer Zakhar Prilepin. The Biden administration has greenlit Kiev's campaign of terror hours after Russian writer and activist Zakhar Prilepin was nearly killed in a targeted car bomb a popular Ukrainian news agency submitted a poll that asked its readers, who do you think should be next in the Russian pantheon of scum propagandists? It's open season on Russian intellectuals supportive of the government's war effort, according to Ukrainian news agency Union, following a car bomb intended to kill Russian novelist Zakhar Prilepin in the Nizhny Novgorod region of Russia. The outlet polled its audience on Telegram, providing a list of names of prominent Russians that could be assassinated. Excluding the 2 reported assassination attempts on Russian President Vladimir Putin, Prilepin is the 3rd high-profile Russian to be targeted for assassination by Ukrainian agents. His maiming follows the car bombing that killed Daria Dugina, which was intended for her father, the Russian nationalist philosopher Alexander Dugin, and the bombing of a public event featuring Vladimir Tartarovsky, who ran a popular Telegram channel. The Telegram post by Union explicitly references Dugin, Tartarovsky, and Prilepin. So here's Michael Cobb's hashtag defend our values. Union, part of the 1+1 media group majority owned by Kolomoisky, generates polls on its Telegram channel about which Russian journalists should be murdered next. Clients of Union are, among others, AP, BBC, Reuters, VOA, and Deutsche Welle. Among the list of potential targets were the operators of other Telegram channels, RT editor-in-chief Margarita Simonian, crudely referred to in the post as Beaver Eater, Russian TV news hosts Dmitry Kiselyov and Sergei Mardan, and others. Some 50,000 Telegram users have voted in the poll at the time of this article's publication. According to Union About page, the outlet partners in information dissemination and exchange with American outlets Reuters and Bloomberg, while its clients include prominent foreign outlets like the BBC and Der Spiegel. So here's their little blurb. Union partners in information dissemination and exchange are the world-leading news agencies, Thomson, Reuters, and Bloomberg. Its subscribers and clients include the largest Ukrainian international corporations, the Coca-Cola Company, Siemens, Philip Morris, Ukraine, ESET, P&G, Inchi SE, Ergodom, Erkland Farming, Erknegro, Carlsberg, Ukraine, Kyivstar, Vodafone, Uknafta, and others. Ukraine's central authorities such as Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, the National Bank, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Security Service of Ukraine, and others. Diplomatic missions and embassies of various international organizations like the OSCE, the European Commissions in Ukraine, influential international media, including BBC, Der Spiegel, The Times, and so on. So that's who this group is connected to, right? This is their Telegram channel, right? So Union is owned by the 1+1 media group belonging to Ukrainian oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, a longtime backer of Ukrainian President Zelensky and the neo-Nazi Azov Battalion. The conglomerate is also the parent company of TSN, the TV news program that recently put out a bounty for drone terror attacks on Red Square during Moscow's annual May 9th celebration of the defeat of Nazism, aka V-Day. Right?
Right.
So here's the gray zone news. Ukrainian banker offers cash for drone terror in Russia. Oligarch Vladimir Yatsenko offered a $500,000 bounty to any weapons maker able to land a drone in Red Square during Moscow's upcoming Victory Day parade. So here's this guy.
От про те, як розвивається вітчизняний ринок безпілотників.
Do what?
Do we need to go back in time for this?
Yeah, probably. So I'll read it anyway. Because I don't think any of you know Russian or Ukrainian. So, but about how the domestic drone market is developing. When all the Ukrainian Defense Forces needs are met, how will Ukrainian developers take their place on the international UAV market? And when will Ukrainian drones fly to Red Square? Let's talk about this with our next guest, Vladimir Yatsenko. Yatsenko is the co-founder of Monobank and producer of the Dove Goose drone. Vladimir, welcome. We're happy to see you. Do you think the Ukrainians will fly to Moscow, he asks. I think that it's a necessary moment. That is, I think that May 9th is a very good moment because I read that Putin is planning a parade on Red Square.
Wow.
And there will be a lot of vehicles. That is, they will be, as they say, very legitimate military targets and quite a lot of civilians, sir.
Right.
And I think that with the whole community making drones, I think that we should really make a holiday for them. And I hear that Putin isn't sure whether he will attend. So we must somehow remind him of us.
By bombing them.
So as not to hide the intrigue, I will say, I decided to give this award to Ukrainian manufacturers. The premium is very large, and I believe it should be spent on improvement of drones. The prize will be 20 million Hryvnias, right, which is approximately 549,000 USD. With the condition, the drone must land on May 9th on Red Square. The drone should be recognized, that is. It must have Ukrainian slogans like "Glory to Ukraine" or "Putin la la la" or "Glory to the Heroes," so that I can understand which manufacturers made it and who didn't arrive. The money is the minimum amount I always have deposited in Monobank. You can go to the QR code and see that there's already 20 million Hryvnias for participation in the parade. I want to say that in order not to give the impressions this is a game with the Bush participation, according to the law, I will not pay the prize to myself. By the way, I want to say we are already warming up. For example, on the 28th of March, there was news that there was a drone. Unfortunately, for us, it was a training drone, but it caught on a high voltage line. But we didn't make it only 45 kilometers from Red Square. It was, by the way, ready for the parade. We watched a bit how they reacted, whether or not they see us. I can say that everything will be fine. Let's create a holiday for them.
Wow. That's our money, folks.
And yet we still think that the other drones was a Russian false flag. Is that? They're making it very easy for false flags in this case. By literally, hey, could you write this on the false flag for us? Like, so...
I mean, I gotta give them props for wanting them to be so blatant as hell to let them know, yeah, it's us. And what? Like...
Yep.
Hi, Misty. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Real quick to finish up, the assassination attempt against Russian novelist Sahir Prilepin conceded with raids inside Ukraine that swept up 11 war commentators, including Gonzalo Lira, an American citizen. Ukraine's SBU intelligence agency announced on May 4th that they had arrested another network of enemy internet agitators. So here's Rubenstein. Ukrainian secret police announced they have arrested 11 internet agitators, a sign of what's to come to the Western world if the elites are to be believed when they say this is a war for the future of democracy. American journalists with ties to U.S. intelligence have sought to justify the targeting of online influencers. Christo Grosev, the lead Russian investigator at the U.S. government-funded outfit Bellingcat, justified the bombing of a public event at a cafe in St. Petersburg on the grounds that the target was a, quote, propagandist. Similarly, Sarah Ashton Cirillo, an American journalist and former Democratic Party operative who enlisted in Ukraine's armed forces, filmed a phantasmagorical defense of the arrest of American Gonzalo Lira by Ukrainian intelligence agents on the same grounds. While the SBU had only publicly released images of Lira with the face blurred, Ashton Cirillo was somehow able to produce uncensored ones. Meanwhile, the Biden admin has provided a green light for Ukraine's campaign of terror inside Russia following the second assassination attempt of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was asked about the U.S. view on attacks inside Russian territory. These are decisions for Ukraine to make about how it's going to defend itself, Blinken responded. Among the trove of top-secret documents linked by National Guardsman Jack... First of all, imagine if Russia did that with Iranian terrorists or... I mean, like any terrorist group, if they just like, oh yeah, let them, you know. Among the trove of top secret documents linked by National Guardsman Jack Teixeira are now likely slowly decomposing in file cabinets at top American newsrooms is a document detailing the U.S. dismissal projections for a Ukrainian counteroffensive as it hopes for recapturing the whole of its pre-2014 territory. Ukraine is resorting to a campaign of targeted assassinations against its most vocal critics in Russia, and disappearing those who remain within its realm. So, thoughts?
All I can say is damn.
Yeah.
And
stay safe out there, fam. You know?
I mean, but it's not surprising to us given what we've reported and seeing, you know, our colleagues in the space also have reported. And I know Alex was on Sabi's show yesterday, so I believe he probably would have talked about this too.
Yeah.
But the blatancy of just being like, and mainstream media is not going to talk about it. Mainstream media is not going to mention this at all.
Right.
Or they're going to spin it in terms of, oh yeah, well, like if they get bombed or whatever, or if they get murked or whatever, that they had it coming. Essentially,
yes.
Like, you know, like
as the Irish would say, I'd leave your car door open when you start it. Is all I'm saying. You know,
right?
So
it's well, but again, this is where our money is going to.
Yeah.
Marianne,
mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to explain this?
Putin's lies. Putin's lies. They're you know they're just as like, you know, apparent as Biden's lies. Let me check my crystals to see the answers. Anyway, I think that's a good spot to leave it. But you know.
And Indy isn't here. He usually we should just ask him if we have announcements that he wants us to
I know, right? He probably could just give us a slide that, you know, anyway. I don't know if Tara, right after this, Collin's going to go on the Misty Winston show on TNT Radio. Yeah. So go check that out by going to tntradio.live. By the way, there's a chat in there. Say hello. You'll figure it out where to go, you know.
Yeah, please go support me because I think this is my first time actually being on radio like that. So I have to here where we can kind of go off however long. Like I have to kind of watch my time. So but it'd be nice for you guys to kind of come in and support me and say hi. So
don't worry, they have music to play you off. You'll be all right. You know. So tomorrow, Friday we might have a stream with Crab, another shit tip tier list. We'll see when that happens. So stay tuned for that.
So Crab confirm is at 8:30 on Friday night, right?
I think so.
And Chris, I believe.
If Tara doesn't have a stream, I'll be on that. And if Tara does have a stream, I'll be here. But yeah, that's Friday, 8:30.
That's Friday, not Saturday.
And then Tara will be Friday, probably around 10 o'clock Eastern. But yeah, Misty said you'll be fine. She's got you. She's gonna bring you into her little radio arms and carry you to victory. But
Sunday, how do we miss that?
Yep.
With Indian U at 10.
Yep. Saturday, go check out Oz over at Roar Media. You know, he works hard all week. Go watch his stuff.
Sunday, I would assume Alternative Angle would be live, I think.
Yep.
Glad to hear confirm that. But he'll let you know through the Twitters and everything.
Yep.
And then next week potentially we'll have a guest.
Yep.
It might be either live or pre-recorded. We'll let you know on the Twitters.
Afro Man has not reached back out to us yet, so we'll have to get that confirmation before he comes on the show.
I told Reef, honestly, like, I'm not that interested in interview, but like I said, shoot your shot. Yes, you are.
Don't lie.
Yes, I said shoot you. What?
You don't lie. You've been listening to Afro Man since you were a pup. You know.
No.
Yep.
I just know him from the song, and that's it.
Yep.
But
we were gonna have him on, but then we got high.
As I told Reef, you can shoot your shot, and if we manage to score an interview with him, I'll definitely do it. But
I'll reach out to his social media people. Feel free to do that for us as well if anyone wants to. We'll interview that guy. But anyway, I think that's it. Stay tuned for all the shows. Follow all the network stuff, especially the alternative channels in case we get pulled right there in the doobly-doo. indienews.network, you can go there. It's our Linktree, has all the links to all the members and all the channels of INN. So I think that's it, right? Follow us, follow the network on Twitter, go watch Collin on Misty. Enjoy the show, fams. As always, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, peeps.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.